Of all the Marvel characters, to see a popularity boost with the general public over the course of the Marvel vs. Capcom series lifespan, absolutely none can compare to the astronomical levels achieved by Marvel's resident shellhead, Tony Stark, better known as Iron Man. Tony inherited Stark Industries at the age of 21 after the death of Howard and Maria Stark in a car accident. It'd be revealed years later that Howard and Maria weren't actually Tony's biological parents, and that he's actually the child of a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent and a Hydra operative. But that's a whole other crazy thing. Tony grew up with an affinity for electronics, partially due to friction with his father growing up, believing in electronics and the theory around how they function to be more reliable than people. After taking over Stark Industries, he took the company to new heights, always being on the cutting edge of new technology in not just his father's specialty of weapons manufacturing, but all manners of scientific achievements. Of course, one fateful trip to oversee a demonstration of his weapons in a war-torn region would end with him unknowingly activating a tripwire trap, getting a piece of shrapnel lodged in his chest dangerously close to his heart, on top of being kidnapped. His captors falsely promised to save him if he developed a weapon for them, but Tony, seeing through the facade and knowing he was on borrowed time, instead opted to use the scraps of tools given to him to plot his escape. Aided by renowned scientist Ho Yinsen, Tony builds what will become the very first Iron Man armor to facilitate his escape, the armor doubling as a pacemaker to keep his heart in check. Yinsen sadly gave his life in the 11th hour to distract their captors long enough for Tony to finish the suit. While making his escape, Tony would come across a stranded Marine Corps pilot in the middle of servicing his shot-down aircraft. This pilot was James Rhodes, who allowed Tony to use his helicopter to give his suit the additional charge it needed, and the two were able to escape enemy lines together, becoming fast friends in the process. Upon returning to the States and having a few more run-ins with terrorists attempting to steal parts of the armor, Tony would decide to use the suit for superheroics, coming up with the cover story of Iron Man being a paid bodyguard using a suit developed by him. Over the course of his superhero career, Tony would iterate on the Iron Man armor's design, landing on his iconic red and gold color scheme relatively early on, though he's switched color schemes with them just as often as people change hats. He's also notably a founding member of the Avengers, Marvel's now iconic superhero team, and notably bankrolls the team as well, in addition to usually providing the extravagant lodgings for the team, be it Avengers Mansion or Stark Tower. Tony would have some pretty notable public struggles, his alcoholism being a major one at one point in his life, getting to the point that Rhodey has to step in and take over as Iron Man because Tony just isn't in a place to safely do so any longer. Tony, after hitting rock bottom and building himself back up, would eventually return and take the mantle once again, though certain circumstances would occasionally strain he and James' friendship, the late 80s and early 90s particularly being a bit tumultuous for them. Like any comic book character that's been around for a long time, Iron Man also has his share of stories so awful or just plain dumb that fans and even creators just elect to ignore them. Ask any longtime fan about The Crossing and they'll either pretend they didn't hear you or politely ask you to leave. Iron Man particularly grew in prominence just ahead of the announcement of the first movie, with him being a central character in the Marvel event Civil War, Tony siding with the idea of government oversight for heroes in opposition to Captain America, fueling the story's main conflict. Depending on who you ask, this story had Tony poorly portrayed at best, and wildly, hilariously out of character at worst. I'm personally in the camp that Tony has had enough experience with his own technology being co-opted by bad faith actors to know better about blindly trusting oversight like that, but it is what it is, and it's sold, so what do I know? While the Marvel Cinematic Universe definitely boosted him in public consciousness, perhaps more than any other Marvel character, Iron Man was still a solid B-list character beforehand, having been popular enough to get toys and even his own animated series in the 1990s. With that in mind, it's not surprising at all that when Capcom got the opportunity to make a second fighting game based on Marvel properties and got the chance to use the entire universe beyond the X-Men, that Iron Man was one of the characters they chose, debuting in 1995's Marvel Superheroes. Iron Man's history in Capcom fighters is a bit funny because his biggest impact on the series is arguably his absence in certain games. I talked about this in War Machine's video, so I won't dwell on it too long, but as it turns out, legal obligations kept Iron Man from Capcom fighters in the latter half of the 90s. As mentioned by a few former and current Capcom staff, notably artist and resident comic reader at the company back then, Katsuya Akitomo, as well as producer Kenji Kataoka, an unspecified company obtained exclusive rights to use Iron Man in video games from 1996 to 2000. The company was never outright named, but Iron Man only ever appeared in one game during that time, a crossover game featuring Valiant Comics' XL Man of War, a similar superhero to Iron Man that was even co-created by at least one person involved with Iron Man books at one point. The game itself was published by Acclaim, who also released a Fantastic Four game in that time span as well, which Kenji Kataoka again didn't explicitly name, but all but confirmed kept the Fantastic Four, and notably Dr. Doom, out of the Capcom fighters for the same span of time. This would end up leading to the inclusion of War Machine in the first Marvel vs. Capcom game, with Marvel actually having made the suggestion to Capcom of recoloring the Marvel Superheroes Iron Man sprite and saying it's War Machine to get around the legal hurdles. Iron Man would later return in Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and remained a roster mainstay from that point forward, arguably being the most forward-facing Marvel character in Marvel Infinite, directly opposite of Mega Man X on the Capcom side. Iron Man is voiced in Marvel Superheroes and Marvel 2 by Chris Britton, who is no stranger to voicing Marvel and Capcom characters. He would later voice Odin in Thor: Tales of Asgard, Dr. Doom in Iron Man: Armored Adventures, and Dylan in Dino Crisis 2. His best known Marvel role, however, is Mr. Sinister in X-Men the Animated Series, with him actually coming back to reprise the role in X-Men 97 as well. He also voiced Light's dad in the English dub of Death Note as well. Iron Man is one of those characters in Marvel superheroes where almost every aspect of how they're implemented can be traced back to specific comic book issues and panels, so we're gonna be going a bit more in depth than usual here. So, grab a snack, get comfy, and let's take a dive into Iron Man's history in Capcom fighters. I've always been a fan of how Capcom's Marvel fighters function as sort of a time capsule for the status quo of the characters involved in any one game, and I think Iron Man might actually be the best example of this on the Marvel side of things. Iron Man changes his suits pretty frequently in the comics, upgrading them whenever it's convenient for him, so he has no less than 3 primary suits he uses over the course of the Marvel vs. Capcom games, alternate costumes notwithstanding. In Marvel Superheroes and Marvel vs. Capcom 2, Tony is sporting Model 13 of the Iron Man armor, generally referred to as the Modular Armor, debuting in issue 300 of The Invincible Iron Man by Len Kaminsky and Kevin Hopgood. As the name implies, the Modular Armor's main claim to fame is its ability for Tony to implement all kinds of add-ons to the armor on the fly, instead of having a single integrated suit like he normally does. This allows for additional weaponry or tech modifications to be made without having to design a new suit from scratch. Perhaps the most well-known modification is the Hulkbuster armor, which was made in anticipation of having to face down the Hulk. Tony actually has a habit of making specific armors to counter specific threats, usually known as his Buster suits, Hulkbuster being the most iconic, though they rarely ever actually defeat the person they were built to counter. He's made suits to combat the Hulk, Thor, the Phoenix Force, and even Megatron, and no, I'm not kidding about that last one. Though he actually only ever had this suit for about 2 or so years in the comics, the Modular Armor is likely the suit that comes to mind for people when they think of Iron Man in the 1990s, partially due to the Capcom fighters, but also because of its use in his animated series, being the primary armor he utilized there. Anytime Marvel media harkens back to the 1990s and features Iron Man, this suit is usually the one used for him, X-Men 97 and Marvel Cosmic Invasion being some of the most recent examples. Most of the in-game art for characters in X-Men Children of the Atom and Marvel Superheroes are taken directly from comic book pages, and Iron Man is no different. The pose he has in the Marvel Superheroes Attract Mode intro, for example, is taken from issue 304 of Iron Man. His character select and victory pose art is taken from this panel in Iron Man issue 308 as well. Iron Man has a relatively straightforward moveset in Marvel Superheroes, but underneath the hood lies arguably one of the most complex characters to pilot in the game. He has great mobility and a fantastic 8-way air dash, notably faster than Magneto's. Between Unibeam and Smart Bomb, he can zone pretty effectively. Proton Cannon does absolutely insane damage for just 1 bar, and he has some of the most stylish and practical infinites in the game. Those infinites come with a relatively steep execution barrier though. Tony might arguably have the highest learning curve of the generally regarded top tiers in terms of optimal play. And for how damaging Proton Cannon is, its immense startup frames means you'll need a Dizzy to reliably connect it. Good thing his infinites can Dizzy opponents easily then. As I mentioned before, a lot of Iron Man's portrayal in this game can be traced back to very specific parts of the comics. We'll reference them as we go on from here on out. Iron Man's jumping fierce punch, focus shot, can be aimed either up or down. Aside from having a generous hitbox, this is also very important for maintaining corner juggles for some of his more advanced combos across the series. He also has a dedicated command normal, descending kick, done with down and medium kick in the air. This is less of a kick and more of a knee drop, but whatever. Outside of instantly altering his jump trajectory and serving as something of a discount tri-dash, this can also combo in the focus shot as well. Liftoff is done by pressing up and heavy kick in the air. This is essentially Iron Man's heavy kick launcher, but done in the air. Unibeam is Iron Man's first special move, performed with a half circle forward and any punch button.
Unibeam! Unibeam!
This is a concentrated beam of energy that Iron Man fires out of his chest plate, the active frames and damage being dependent on the attack button pressed. This can be done in the air as well. Iron Man's had this in the comics for a very long time, though as far as I'm aware, the first named instance was in issue 55 of Invincible Iron Man. That issue also features the first ever appearance of a certain other Marvel character, but it's inevitable that we'll get around to him, so we'll save him for another time. Repulsor Blast is done with a half circle back and punch.
Repulsor Blast! Repulsor Blast!
This is an anti-air move that hits multiple times and actually does pretty decent damage if all of the hits connect. He also has some pretty hilarious infinites he can do with this move as well.
Repulsor Blast! Repulsor Blast! Repulsor Blast! Repulsor Blast! Repulsor Blast! Repulsor Blast!
Repulsor technology has been a constant in Iron Man's armor designs from early on, using microcircuitry and magnets to produce concussive blasts that can knock people over at their weakest and completely vaporize people at their most powerful. As far as the move itself goes though, Repulsor Blast is actually inspired by this little maneuver Tony pulls while being restrained by the controller in issue 293 of Iron Man. Smart Bomb is done with a punch and kick of the same strength.
Smart Bomb! Smart Bomb!
Iron Man fires two projectiles that explode on contact, either with the opponent or on the floor, the move's distance depending on the strength of the attack buttons pressed. This move can be done in the air as well, and is a great way to keep opponents off of you, on top of being really useful in combos as well. While their utility is original to this game, their visual design is based on these drone hologram projectors that Iron Man utilizes in issue 296 of Iron Man. Iron Man also has the ability to fly by doing a quarter circle back and hitting all three kick buttons. Iron Man can stay in the air for a fairly long time, and notably his startup animation is faster than Magneto's, making for a rare instance of Iron Man being a premier flight character over him. A lot of Iron Man's most potent advanced combos utilize his flight and air dash capabilities, like this one that involves the use of Smart Bomb,
Smart Bomb! Smart Bomb! Smart Bomb! Smart Bomb! Smart Bomb! Smart Bomb!
as well as this one that uses repeated super jumps cancelled into down forward air dashes.
Proton Cannon!
Why didn't Tony just hit Thanos with this combo on Titan in Infinity War? Is he stupid? Some of these infinites can even seamlessly transition into each other.
Smart Bomb! Smart Bomb! Smart Bomb! Smart Bomb!
Next up is Tony's lone super, Proton Cannon, done with a quarter circle forward and two punches.
Marvelous! Proton Cannon!
Tony materializes a giant cannon with its own hitbox and fires a giant laser from it, causing massive damage. Of course, the drawback is that it has a ton of startup. This move is best done if you either get a dizzy or use it to specifically punish a whiffed super from your opponent. To say this move is one of the most iconic supers from a Capcom fighter would be a massive understatement. I think it's up there with Mega Optic Blast, and Maximum Spider is one of those supers that just sticks with you. You might initially assume that this was a move made up for these games, but the cannon design itself was actually inspired by the comics, the cannon appearing in issue 294 of Iron Man. There, it's a retooled weapon Iron Man cobbles together to combat a tech parasite on the space station. Marvel Cosmic Invasion also shouts out the move of Tony's Iron Cannon special there as well. We'll be talking about issue 294 in more detail shortly, as that issue informs a lot of Iron Man related stuff in Marvel superheroes. Iron Man's special gem power utilizes the Soul Stone. While Soul Stone is active, Iron Man can drain HP from opponents with his normals for a short time, in addition to the HP regeneration the stone already provides, on top of being able to steal meter as well. Here are Iron Man's colors in the game. And here's his ending. Like all other characters in Marvel superheroes, the ending images are actual comic panels reinterpreted as pixel art by Capcom artists. The first frame is taken from Iron Man issue 309. The second frame is from issue 312 of Iron Man. And the frame 3 is the most interesting, as it's actually a combination of two completely different comic book panels. Tony is once again taken from this panel in Iron Man 312. And Captain America is taken from this page in issue 268 of Uncanny X-Men. Iron Man's stage in Marvel superheroes is the Stark Enterprises space station. This space station debuted in issue 205 of Iron Man during Denny O'Neil's run. Like a lot of Iron Man related stuff in Marvel superheroes though, its depiction is largely based on its appearance during Len Kaminsky's Iron Man run, specifically issues 294 and 295. There, the space station had been overtaken by a tech parasite named Technovore, and Tony finds himself in an aliens-esque situation fighting for survival. In the stage itself, you fight on a moving platform that also seems to be transporting a small spacecraft. This stage is interesting, as there's 3 main sections of the stage, but the transition to the next section will only begin at the start of a round. Because of this, it's actually quite easy to miss the third portion of this stage in the standard 1-2 match if a fight doesn't go to the third round. One neat detail on this stage, and this stage alone in Marvel superheroes, is that it has a quick little stage intro showing an airlock disengaging before focusing on the 2 fighters entering the stage. Little stage intro animations like this were definitely more SNK's thing around this time, so it's neat to see Capcom trying their hand at it. Speaking of intro animations, you might notice that Iron Man's intro animation has him utilizing a giant rocket pack. This also comes from, you guessed it, Iron Man issue 294. The first portion of the stage sees the transport platform passed by various hexagon-shaped hallways. There's a neat little parallax background layer set behind these as well. Upon reaching round 2, the transport starts moving again past some closed shutters. If you super jump or have a character with flight, you can catch a glimpse of some windows giving you a pretty neat view of outer space. As the transport moves along, it comes into an area with a large view of space, including what looks like Saturn. The space station itself was shown to have areas like this in the comics, specifically this shot in issue 215. As you transition to a potential round 3, the transport begins moving upwards, finally landing at a docking bay, with space station staff being seen on both the left and right of the platform, the left side housing a building displaying spacecraft departures on a sign. The space station itself would be destroyed during the events of Iron Man issue 295, where Technovore would essentially assimilate it in an attempt to destroy Iron Man. It's really cool to see Capcom's take on what was something of a minor fixture in Iron Man comics for a certain span of time. The stage theme was composed by Takayuki Iwai, who also did the stage themes for Captain America, Spider-Man, Doctor Doom, Juggernaut, and Blackheart. I think it's a pretty good theme all around, suitably sounding a bit spacey yet industrial. While War Machine's theme in Marvel vs. Capcom 1 is largely original, it does incorporate the background melody of this specific track into its intro and bridge portions, as a nice little bit of connective tissue. Free from the chains of wholly mediocre Acclaim games, Iron Man returns in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and wouldn't you know it, he's still pretty great. Iron Man in Marvel 2 doesn't really get anything new moveset-wise, but occupies an interesting niche where, depending on who you ask, he either exists just outside of, or is on the borderline of the game's top tier. Proton Cannon is still strong and is a lot more practical now, thanks to being an excellent DHC tool. The Infinite. Learn it, love it, use it. It's also one of the easier ones in the game to learn. He still maintains pretty great air mobility overall, and the Repulsor Blast is one of the most damaging assists in the game, provided it gets all of its hits. He's still very execution dependent though. His trademark Infinite is definitely on the easier side, but if you drop it, you might be in trouble. Iron Man is largely similar to his Marvel superheroes incarnation. Even his frame data is more or less the same, which works in his favor. The only changes are some minor input adjustments made to his moveset. Unibeam is now done with a quarter circle forward in punch instead of a half circle in punch, making it that much more practical to use. Smart Bomb, like Wolverine's Stroke Claw and Storm's lightning attack in previous games, was changed from a punch and kick of the same strength in Marvel superheroes to being done with light kick and heavy punch. Iron Man still retains the three variations, but now has to hold back or forward during the input, to fire them closer or farther respectively. Like most other flight characters returning in this game, the input to activate flight only requires a quarter circle back and 2 kicks now, on account of Marvel 2's fewer buttons. And of course, you can't really talk about Iron Man in this game without talking about the Infinite. Though it's one of the easier ones in the game to learn, it's deceptively tricky getting the rhythm down. The easiest way to confirm into it is off of an anti-air assist. It can be done with Cyclops' anti-air assist, but is most consistently done with Psylocke's anti-air assist. Iron Man can also confirm into it solo if he manages to get a clean hit with his liftoff command normal as well. Look, I could make a bunch of jokes relating to that video, and I know most of you have already seen it, but I really do recommend watching the whole thing. Not just because it's funny, but it's also legitimately one of the best fighting game tutorial videos on the internet.
Motherfucker, fuck, drop! What you want to do is when you get him in the corner, you want to hit him diagonal once. Now hit up. Now go diagonal. Now hit up. Now go diagonal. Now hit up.
Iron Man's first assist is Unibeam.
Good work, Soldier. Superior attack. Good work, Soldier. Superior attack.
His second assist is Repulsor Blast.
Superior attack. Good work, Soldier. Superior attack. Good work, Soldier. Superior attack.
His third assist is his launcher.
Good work, Soldier. Superior attack. Good work, Soldier. Superior attack.
Here are Iron Man's colors. Color 5 is likely a reference to a very specific Iron Man suit, but we'll be going into more detail on that a little bit later in the Marvel 3 section, since it's also referenced in that game as well. Iron Man has a long history of stories, and fortunately, a lot of them are quite solid. Let's talk about some of them. I'd say if we're talking classic Iron Man runs and stories, David Michelini and Bob Layton's runs on the character is probably the best place to start. Their initial run started with issue 116, and they'd intermittently returned to the book over the course of the following few years. A lot of stuff from the general Iron Man mythos can be credited to them, and they're the team responsible in particular for the story Demon in the Bottle, in which Tony confronts his alcoholism. Their initial run also features the classic Doom Quest story, in which Iron Man and Dr. Doom find themselves stranded in Camelot in the past after an accident involving Doom's time platform. Between Michelini and Layton's first 2 runs, there's also the Denny O'Neil run, which I've always thought was a little underrated in comparison compared to the great runs it's sandwiched between. O'Neill's run takes the themes and struggles introduced in Demon in a Bottle and goes in some really great directions, further exploring Tony as he goes through his first major relapse. O'Neill reportedly drew on his own past struggles with alcohol as inspiration, and it really shows. Len Kaminsky's run from the early to mid-90s is next up, and as it turns out, it's also a pretty fantastic run as well, with some great art over its duration from Kevin Hopgood and Tom Morgan particularly. Read this one if you want to see where Marvel Superheroes and Marvel vs. Capcom 2 most drew inspiration from. Kurt Busiek's late 90s Iron Man run is also a personal favorite of mine, taking place after the mess that was Heroes Reborn, and is also pretty damn solid overall. Probably the first big Iron Man story of the 2000s would come in the form of Warren Ellis and Adi Granov's Extremis storyline. On top of giving Tony the new sleek suit he'd pretty much used for the rest of the 2000s, it also more or less laid the groundwork for Iron Man in both comics, games, and most media from then on. For a lot of reasons, I'd say it's definitely required reading. After the events of Civil War, you get Tony in a unique position in the Marvel Universe, and a pair of really good runs that I'd like to talk about for a bit. Matt Fraction's Iron Man run spins out of Tony's time as director of S.H.I.E.L.D., fighting off a vendetta plot launched by the son of Obadiah Stane, running directly into Dark Reign, and the fallout from that event, ending with Tony on the run, and eventually wiping his memories out to make sure Norman Osborn doesn't get access to them. Though the run kinda peters out after that, those first 3 stories in the run, The Five Nightmares, World's Most Wanted, and Stark Disassembled, are pretty good, and at one point during this video's production was going to be the main comic recommendation for this video. However, there's a reason why I said that Extremis is kinda required reading. After Extremis, Charles and Daniel Knauf would begin writing the main Iron Man book, starting with the Story Execute program, which itself directly follows up from Extremis and dovetails into Iron Man's role in Civil War. That in turn led to Tony's stint as the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the wake of Civil War, which leads to my comic recommendation for today. It's a 6-issue story that deals with the weaponization of Extremis for what's frankly a mass culling on a global scale. You remember Wesker's plan in Resident Evil 5 for Ouroboros? It's basically that. It's what's in my opinion the single best modern Iron Man story, but I do want to once again preface that reading Extremis is definitely recommended before diving into this. This video's comic book recommendation is the Iron Man story Haunted by Charles and Daniel Knauf, collected in issues 21 through 26 of Iron Man, Director of S.H.I.E.L.D. After the events of Civil War and Tony being installed as the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., he sets into motion the Initiative, which would train registered superheroes and assign them to S.H.I.E.L.D.-sponsored superhero teams, all 50 states having at least one such designated team. Haunted opens up with one such initiative team in Nebraska, following up on a reported trespasser. The 2 sent are Paragon and Gadget, the former having some seemingly generic super strength and flight powers, and the latter being a tech genius with her own mechanical suit, having been inspired by Iron Man as a child. They come across somewhat minor Avengers villain Graviton, who seemingly gruesomely murders Gadget and critically injures Paragon, but it's soon discovered that there's much more to that fateful encounter than what it seems. This coincides with Tony getting hallucinations of people in his life that have died due to his actions, most prominently Happy Hogan and Steve Rogers. Meanwhile, the scientist initially behind the creation of the Extremis virus has her death faked to work for a mysterious benefactor, though the more work that's done on the virus, the more it's obvious that this benefactor only seeks to use Extremis for some pretty wild stuff. As Tony gets closer and closer to the truth of what's going on, the hallucinations get worse, to the extent that his ability to reason and lead S.H.I.E.L.D. in the moment is called into question, though the hallucinations actually end up serving a purpose in his investigation. Gadget had been seemingly investigating missing persons cases in Nebraska that seemed to have been increasing in numbers, which turned out to be linked to the Extremis experiments going on, and being that she got too close, she was murdered. This culminates in a race to Nebraska as Tony, having to wear an anklet that damaged access to his suit, manages to put the pieces together behind the person attempting to weaponize Extremis again, and why it led to Gadget's murder. I think Haunted, aside from its masterful use of more underused characters in the greater Marvel universe like Graviton and Doc Samson, excels at displaying the guilt that Tony regularly carries, amplified even more by the events of Civil War. I won't spoil the main antagonist of the arc, but it's also arguably one of the best stories to feature that particular character, portraying them as sort of a dark, twisted mirror of Tony's perspective of futurism. While again, the Matt Fraction run that follows this is really good, I think this is an all-timer Iron Man story that should be experienced by anyone with even a remote interest in the character. Iron Man was one of 6 initial characters revealed for Marvel vs. Capcom 3 when the game was announced in early 2010, opposite of Morgan on the Capcom side. Iron Man in Marvel 3 is voiced by Eric Loomis, who would go on the voice of the character in most media for the next decade or so, reprising the role in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite and Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, though he also had smaller parts earlier in his career in As Told by Ginger in the English version of Crayon Shin-Chan. His most prominent Iron Man role outside of games, however, is playing the character in Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, which more or less dictated how he played the character everywhere else. Being years after the release of Marvel 2, Iron Man's suit had to be updated in turn, now sporting Iron Man armor Model 29, Extremis, debuting in the 4th issue of the Extremis arc by Warren Ellis and Adi Granov. I've already mentioned the story that introduced Extremis, but the suit itself is arguably to the 2000s what the modular armor is to the 1990s, pretty much using it throughout the latter half of the 2000s. The suit design itself would become the primary inspiration for the design of the main suit in the first Iron Man movie, partially owed to the design and keyframe reference art for the movie being done by Adi Granov, selected specifically because of his work on the Extremis comic. I'll be honest with my bias here. Extremis is my personal favorite Iron Man armor of all time, and I've always been happy that it was the primary design he used in Marvel 3. And the more I think about it, the more I realize Marvel 3 is probably one of the best rendered versions of it in general. Extremis most notably has a synthetic skin layer of sorts directly connected with Tony's nervous system, allowing him to summon the suit at will and interface with all kinds of technology on the fly, and at speeds previously thought impossible. Iron Man's theme in Marvel 3 is an arrangement of War Machine's theme from Marvel vs. Capcom 1. I used to personally dislike this particular arrangement, but I've honestly grown on it in the last few years. I do, however, find it kind of funny that the little 6-note leitmotif that originated from Iron Man's Marvel Superhero stage theme was completely excised from this arrangement, thereby removing the only real musical reference to Iron Man himself in the song. I feel like that kind of defeats the purpose, but whatever. Iron Man is interesting in that his mobility changed a bit between Vanilla and Ultimate Marvel 3, significantly changing his forte in both versions. He still overall has great mobility. Unibeam is a great beam projectile and an even better beam assist. His zoning options are also still pretty solid, and he finally has a level 3 to cash out meter on for extra damage. That said, his air dash in Ultimate specifically has a bunch of startup that it didn't have in Vanilla, and his grounded normals are a bit awkward in terms of consistent comboing. Iron Man was one of a few characters that got some changes in Ultimate Marvel 3 that on paper don't sound too drastic, but ended up changing how he played compared to Vanilla Marvel 3. For one, in Vanilla, Iron Man actually had a double jump, which was good for air combos and general movement utility. This was completely removed in Ultimate. Moreover though, in Vanilla, Iron Man had a more traditional air and triangle dash where he could act near immediately after air dashing. In Ultimate, Tony has to wait several more frames into the air dash before he can act at all, drastically lowering its utility as a pressure tool. In Ultimate, the air dash itself also takes a bit longer to fully accelerate, making him feel a lot more weighed down than in Vanilla. While these are functionally nerfs, it does make him a bit more unique than in Vanilla at the least. He still retains Focus Shot and his ability to angle it from previous games. His first special move is Unibeam, done with a quarter circle forward and any attack button.
Unibeam! Good! Fire!
This move functions very similarly to past games, and functions as one of Marvel 3's better beam projectiles overall, being comparable to Doom's Plasma Beam. As always, this can also be done in the air. Repulsor Blast is now done with a quarter circle back and then the attack button.
Cool! Repulsor Blast! Cool! Repulsor Blast! Yes!
This move also functions pretty similarly to past games. However, Tony has a new follow-up to this move in Marvel 3, Repulsor Spread, done by pressing heavy attack during Repulsor Blast active frames.
Repulsor Blast! Spread! Yes! Repulsor Blast! Spread! Yes!
This puts the opponent into a spinning hard knockdown that can be comboed into any of his supers. Interestingly enough, this input was actually simplified for Ultimate. In vanilla Marvel 3, you had to do an additional quarter circle back and heavy attack input during repulsor blast active frames instead. Smart Bomb is now done with a Dragon Punch motion in any attack.
Smart Bomb! Smart Bomb!
Aside from the more straightforward input, Smart Bomb is largely the same as previous games, still also being able to be done in the air. Its biggest additional utility is hitting OTG now, allowing for you to confirm into any of Iron Man's supers, provided there isn't too much hit stun decay. They're also a big part of some of his TAC infinites as well.
Last attack! Team aerial combo! Got you! Level 3! Got you!
Iron Man can initiate flight with the quarter circle back and the special button. Though flight doesn't last as long as it did in previous games, Iron Man can chain ground normals into a flight cancel and cancel the recovery of that into air normals, giving him some pretty neat combo routes. Iron Man's first hyper combo is Proton Cannon.
Amazing! Beautiful!
Proton Cannon is largely unchanged in both form and function from Marvel 2 overall, though it's a lot easier to combo into solo now, thanks to the hitbox for it being summoned being active a lot faster than in previous games. Iron Man's second super is Angled Proton Cannon, done with a Dragon Punch motion in 2 attacks.
First attack! Here's the big one! Proton Cannon! Amazing!
This is largely what it says on the tin. Proton Cannon, but aimed slightly upwards. It's good for combos where you're concerned that the opponent might have been juggled a bit too high, I suppose. Iron Man's level 3 is Iron Avenger, done with a quarter circle back in 2 attacks.
Unlock power inhibitor! Locked and loaded! Incredible!
This is a cinematic level 3 that sees Tony drag the opponent on the ground before flinging them into the sky and hitting them with a supercharged unibeam. This has personally always been one of my favorite level 3s, not just because it looks cool, but also because it's relatively short and sweet compared to some other level 3s without sacrificing its cinematic flair. If you're fast enough after landing this, you can actually get a Smart Bomb OTG pickup into Proton Cannon for additional damage. Iron Man's first assist is Unibeam. Simply put, this is one of the best beam assists in the game. Solid durability, solid damage, and provides great combo extension utility on par with Doom's Plasma Beam assist. His second assist is Repulsor Blast. His third assist is Smart Bomb. All of Tony's alternate colors from Marvel vs. Capcom 3 onwards reference past suits he's worn in the comics, past video games, and even at least one MCU reference. Color 2 is meant to evoke Tony's very first Iron Man suit, which debuted in issue 39 of Tales of Suspense. This is by far the most primitive of Tony's suits, though he has upgraded it over the years, both out of a sense of nostalgia and for circumstances where he needs a low-tech solution to something. Color 3 references a fan-favorite armor, particularly among longtime Iron Man fans, Model 7, the Silver Centurion armor. Tony first used this against Obadiah Stane in issue 200 of Invincible Iron Man, his first big comeback since relinquishing the Iron Man mantle to the now incapacitated Rhodey. On top of its silver and deep red color scheme, somewhat atypical for Iron Man designs at the time, the shoulder pads also offered a unique silhouette that still stands out even amongst his more modern suits. Like with Extremis to the 2000s, this suit is most closely associated with the 80s for a lot of old school Iron Man fans. Color 5 in Marvel 2 is also a shout out to this suit. Color 4 references one of the first specialty armors Tony's ever designed, Model 6, the Stealth Armor, debuting in Invincible Iron Man issue 152. As the name implies, this suit was designed for stealth more so than combat, so there's very little actual onboard weaponry, as the suit's power is more firmly rooted toward its state-of-the-art camouflage capabilities. Color 5 is based on the Mark III version of Tony's original Iron Man suit, debuting in issue 40 of Tales of Suspense, Tony getting the idea to paint it gold from a woman he was seeing at the time, who mentioned that she thought the original Iron Man armor looked too scary in silver. This is also notably the armor he'd be using for the formation of the original Avengers. Color 6 is based on Evil Iron Man, as he appeared in a late game stage in Marvel Superheroes War of the Gems on the Super Nintendo. In that game, Evil Iron Man appeared with 2 color schemes, one closer to his modular design, and a silver and yellow one, which Marvel 3 references. Evil Iron Man himself is actually taken from the Infinity War miniseries, which itself was a direct sequel to the events of the Infinity Gauntlet story, War of the Gems being a loose adaptation of both. Iron Man's alternate costume is the Iron Patriot armor, which debuted in the first issue of Dark Avengers. Iron Patriot notably isn't used in the comics by Tony, but instead Norman Osborn, who takes over as the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. following the events of Secret Invasion. Tony, now on the run, has most of his tech seized, and Osborn gets the most up-to-date Iron Man armor he can find and customizes it to become Iron Patriot. Because Osborn has little to no understanding of repulsor tech and how to leverage it though, this suit functions at minimal capacities compared to pretty much any other Iron Man suit of the time. Notably, this was one of 6 alternate DLC costumes available in the vanilla release of Marvel 3, and owning them there gave them to you for free in Ultimate's initial release. In Ultimate, Iron Man actually has a unique voice line that plays during character intros if he's wearing this specific suit.
I can still smell Norman Osborn's hair gel.
Speaking of, here are all of Iron Man's character interactions.
This armor knows your next move before you do, Steve.
You think I'm going down to some pampered punk like you?
Ready? It's like Civil War all over again. Let's see who really has the better choice, shall we?
If you think I've evolved beyond the choice of murder, you'd be wrong.
Live and let die! You call that tech? I'll show you tech. You were a 2-bit punk when we first met. You're a 2-bit
You
punk
underestimated me from day one. Big mistake.
Live and let die! Face it, Clint, you are a second-tier Avenger. Probably could use that Hulkbuster armor right about now. Will break Metal Man open like a tin can! Live and let die! What was that about Hulk Smash again? No horsepower versus Dark Tech, huh? Bring it, Flyboy.
Oh, the guy who put the war in New Warriors.
Live and let die! Spanish, your name means it doesn't go. You are aptly named. If I win, you're gonna call off that lawsuit against Stark Industries. Deal?
I want the truth and nothing but the truth.
Live and let die! Fight! You know, I could use a good lawyer, but not you. I said good lawyer. Just the arm? Why? Can't afford the rest of the suit?
How much of that suit is bionic?
Ready? Give me a call if you want an upgrade, son. So, you doing anything after this?
That feels so good.
Ready? Told you. A nice candlelight dinner would have been better. Avengers, assemble!
Come on, X-Men. We got work to do.
It's do or die. They don't call us Earth's mightiest heroes for nothing.
And here's his endings in both Vanilla and Ultimate Marvel 3. Iron Man predictably returns to Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, being one of the first characters announced for the game, and arguably headlining the Marvel side of the roster. Iron Man's armor this time around is interesting, because it's kind of a custom mix of design aspects from different Iron Man armors. For one, the gold plating on the armor is a lot more muted than its more saturated tone is seen in the comics, more so evoking his suits in the MCU. That said, the suit borrows most of its design cues from the Model 42 armor in the comics. We'll touch on that in more detail in a bit. Iron Man's theme in Marvel Infinite is an upbeat, heroic sounding theme with prominent brass, hard-hitting drums, and some electric guitar for good measure. As far as Marvel Infinite themes go, I think this one is pretty great. It fits the character and has a pretty catchy melody, all things considered. I think my only real gripe is that it's pretty short and loops fairly quickly. I think it's one of Infinite's more listenable themes though. Iron Man gets the most new tools he's ever gotten in Infinite, but how good does it make him overall? His mobility is still as solid as ever, having access to staircase combos. He has a new projectile in Smart Mine. He also has a new special move, Repulsor Ray, that can wall bounce in certain instances. Heavy Unibeam is actually plus 16 on hit, allowing Iron Man to actually easily combo off of it, though landing that is an admittedly rare situation. Tony has sadly lost Repulsor Blast this time around though. And Smart Mines are cool, but they're not as practical as his old Smart Bombs, which he's also lacking this time around. As always, Tony still has access to Focus Shot in its named variants. He also gets a new command normal, Wrist Missile, done with Forward and Heavy Punch.
Fire! Fire!
This one's more or less a standing version of his old Crouching Heavy Punch from past games, combined with the downward trajectory of its Marvel 3 Crouching Heavy. As always, Unibeam is here, done with the quarter circle forward and any punch.
Unibeam! Unibeam!
As mentioned before, the heavy version is hilariously plus on hit, so in the unlikely event that you land one point blank, you can combo off of it pretty freely. Next up is an entirely new move, Repulsor Ray, done with a quarter circle forward and kick.
Repulsor Ray! Cool! Repulsor Ray! Cool! Repulsor Ray! Here comes the boom! Repulsor Ray! Here comes the boom!
Iron Man does an upward sweeping motion leading with his palm, hitting his opponent with said repulsors. You can press kick 2 additional times for follow-up attacks, the third one leading to a wall bounce. Repulsor Ray isn't anywhere near as good an anti-air to as Repulsor Blast was in previous games, but what it does excel at is whiff punishing and baiting attacks. Because each follow-up can be delayed individually, you can play some mind games with your opponent using this move. Iron Man gets another new move in Infinite, Smart Mine, done with the quarter circle back and kick.
Smart Mine! First attack!
Iron Man hops in the air and a small floating mine projectile appears. The travel distance of the mine and the amount of time it remains on screen until it detonates is dependent on the kick button pressed. While these, again, don't have the same combo utility as Smart Bombs did, these are really good for forcing your opponent to block, and for meaty setups in particular. Given the game's active switch mechanic, I think the latter is probably the utility this move was designed in mind with. As always, Iron Man can fly, pretty much having the same input as in Marvel 2. Iron Man's tri-jumps are notably a lot snappier than in Ultimate Marvel 3, making Rushdown a bit more viable for him this time around, though he's solid in most aspects overall in those regards. Iron Man's first super is, as always, Proton Cannon.
Maximum! Target acquired! It's the big one! Proton Cannon! Maximum!
Functionally, it's mostly the same as Marvel 3, if not maybe a frame or two slower, though the cannon itself has a new design this time around. Iron Man's second super is Angled Proton Cannon, done with a quarter circle forward and 2 kicks. This one is also functionally the same as in Marvel 3 as well. Iron Man's level 3 is Iron Avenger, done with a quarter circle back and 2 punches.
Iron Avenger! Get ready, here's my special!
This one is mostly the same as well, though Iron Man's initial tackle does seem a bit slower than in Marvel 3. As mentioned before, the bulk of inspiration for Iron Man's design in Infinite comes from the Model 42 armor in the comics, and his color 2 drives that home even further, sporting the same black and gold color scheme. Model 42 first appeared in the 2012 Marvel Now relaunch of Iron Man by Kieran Gillen and Greg Land. Considering quite a few characters in Infinite are also sporting their Marvel Now redesigns, it makes sense that Iron Man would too. Color 3 looks to be based on the color scheme of the Arctic armor, debuting in issue 318 of Iron Man during Len Kaminsky's run. It's notably the first brand new suit Tony uses after the modular armor, being Model 14. Color 4's color scheme references the Star Boost armor from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, appearing as one of many armors utilized as part of the Iron Legion in Iron Man 3 specifically. Though it quite literally only has a second or two of screen time there, it seems like one of the more well-regarded MCU suits, also appearing as an alternate armor for Tony in the Crystal Dynamics Avengers game. Iron Man's alternate costume is Iron Man Armor Model 50, also known as the Endosim armor, first appearing in full in Superior Iron Man issue 1. Created with liquid metal tech with physiology inspired by the symbiotes in the Marvel Universe, the Endosim allows Tony to control the armor psionically with a single thought, in some cases even suggesting that the suit itself is alive and can be called to at any time. Tony created the suit after the events of Axis, long story, ended up inverting his morals. Along with this new suit, Tony established operations in San Francisco, having modified a new strain of extremists dubbed 3.0 that he offered to the public for a daily $100 fee, almost like a drug pusher. The second color seems to be based on Crimson Dynamo, a Russia-based legacy character that sometimes opposes and sometimes assists Iron Man, depending on who's in the armor. The first Crimson Dynamo died not too long after his initial introduction in 1963, however. The third color seems to be based off of Model 3 of the rescue armor worn by Pepper Potts, this variant first appearing in Superior Iron Man issue 9. The final color is based off of the Endosim armor's red repulsor state. Whenever Tony readied his repulsors when using the armor, the repulsor colors would switch from light blue to red, inspiring this look in particular. Here are all of Iron Man's character interactions.
Iron Man.
Captain?
Iron Man.
Hey, do you even understand me?
Iron Man.
Ultron. Great. I don't believe in gods and demons.
Target confirmed. Commencing operation.
The Infinity Six. Can't wait to see him.
Deceive me and die, Beast.
Long time no see.
Those who control the stones control the universe.
I guess I have to save the world. Again.
Do you think you can defeat us?
Ready!
Avengers, assemble.
Watch my back, Zero.
Iron Man's kinda funny. You can chart his relative importance to Marvel as a company throughout the Capcom fighters, from being present, to having to take an extended break, to becoming a household name and becoming one of the most front-facing characters on the Marvel side of the roster. If another Marvel vs. Capcom game ever happens in our lifetime, I don't think there's any doubt that Iron Man will be there, and I think that goes for any big Marvel game focusing on the universe at large. I can't end this video without also mentioning his upcoming appearance in Marvel Tokon, with him sporting a unique Arxis design look, and I've gotta say, he looks pretty neat there. I can't wait to see more of him. All that said, that's going to do it for this video. As always, thanks to everyone for watching, and a special thanks to the patrons that support the channel. Take care, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.